Det här är Alexander Solstad Ringheim. Och du har en sån trevlig titel som insect enthusiast. Ja, det tycker jag är värt en applåd i sig. Jag tror att de är det allihopa som är här faktiskt. Men du hade titeln. Varsågod Alexander, det ska bli spännande att lyssna på dig.
Ja. Tusen tack för att jag får lov att snacka för dere. Jag märker att det är lite bred dialekt, så jag tänkte att jag skulle ta det på engelska. Det har gått bra för. So Invertapro is also a mealworm company based in Norway on the west coast. We work with mealworms, although we started with black soldier fly, so we've been working with both for 6 years, but primary focus on mealworms. So yeah, it's sustainable production in a circular system with the use of insects. So in a way you can think of us as an insect producer or as a side stream upcycler. It's pretty much 50-50. I decided that I wanted to do a little bit of a general introduction, and then I'll have a focus on the substrate, since this is the first time I'm talking to you guys, so you get to know who we are. But we went through an early test phase in 2016. We've been in our pilot, which is 1,000 square meters now, for the last 3 or 4 years. And the whole idea, which is Anders has talked about as well, is this idea of continuously moving one step at a time, reducing the risk, scaling the production, developing the value chain. And in our case, and this is the same with our counterparts in Sweden and others, then we're now moving from the pilot phase to the commercial phase and then onwards. A team isn't very important, especially when there's a lot of new things to develop. In our case, we're 12 people. The primary team for the different areas are here, so it's predominantly on the engineering and biology side, and then also on economy. It's very specialized, some of what we do, so we've noticed that we've had to drag people from all over Europe. So we're from Norway and Czechia and the Netherlands and France and Italy and Norway. But there's a lot of excitement around this, and I want to point out one thing, which is that we absolutely don't underestimate how many people are interested in what we do. And we have had now, I think, 130, it says 112 there, master and bachelor students. And I think that if you focus in on what these students do, you get really good work. And also we're startups, so we need to really care about our money. Or we don't have a lot often. But yeah, it's across from engineering to biology to everything else, and we get every week 2 or 3 of these. My point here is just that it's super interesting, both for us as a company and for lots of young people to be working within sustainability and circular economy. I know that I myself feel very privileged that I can work with a thing that I am also passionate about. So this is the value chain. It's actually very much similar to other value chains in that we end up with food and feed. But the major focus for us has then been to upcycle these side waste streams. We could have used traditional feed. That would have been much simpler. But we've chosen to spend the last 5 years figuring out how to utilize these side streams that are available to us and in Europe. 120 million tons in Europe, accounting for 1.4 trillion kroners in expenditures for the taxpayer, which should mostly have been an income, because this is a resource, it shouldn't be a cost. So that's that, developing technology and biology over the last 6 years, post-processing and how do we fulfill the regulation requirements that are around us, and then finally testing these markets. Can we use them in fish and in chickens and in pet food and in food, and seeing how the diversification of where the products can be allotted, that we can have a robust system where we get the right income as well in terms of the right scaling. Like you don't immediately go from having a little production in a cellar, in our case, and then competing with the world's largest industries. You'll have to do it a bit step by step. But the markets have to be tested, validated, and certified. So I wanted just to show a video. This is actually the first time we're showing this. It's just to give an indication of what this looks like in Norway. Most insect companies choose to keep the doors fully closed. We have a extremely collaborative approach. We do have patents and other things like that that we're working on, but at the same time, we believe that we're not actually at the starting line yet. Like, a lot of things have to be in place, so we're extremely focused on collaboration across Norway and internationally. So we can play that film, and then I'll just kind of chat along to that. Yeah, there's a lot of food waste. There's a lot of potential. 70% of what we produce generally in Europe is imported, so I don't really think of as much as a producing continent. We just convert things from one thing to another. That's what we do. This is our facilities. So everything here is taken from our facilities that we've been developing, mostly just iterative development, breaking things, building them up, seeing what functions and doesn't. I think one of our strongest suits is that it takes time, and we've had 16,000 hours of trying to break everything as much as we can and see, does it still work afterwards? Can we fix it? And that's one of the things that I find very comforting now, is that I think almost everything that can go wrong has gone wrong, and we've managed to get through that. So that's very good. But it's super interesting how you're integrating one of the world's oldest things, which is an insect. This is books, as Anders said, from the 1800s. We've been eating this stuff for millions of years, but then integrating that with automation and robots, so like super new ideas connected with the world's oldest thing, one of them, insects. So that's pretty much it. A lot of things look great on AutoCAD and Excel sheets and presentations, but it's the act of testing them and seeing what is actually working, what is not working, why does it work, what's breaking down, and that's an important process. It's a boring process for people looking in on it, because it's like, well, just finish it off. But I think it's an important thing to do, to be piloting, to be scaling, to be throwing products out there. We've been selling products since 2017, and continuously like having that focus of not just sitting in a research facility either, but combining that with trying to make a applicable product for those that are going to use it. So this kind of shows the whole value chain that I just showed a second ago. From we begin, in our case, the primary focus was who has the waste. It's a waste management company. Over the last 5 years, that company has now gone from being a waste management company to being registered as a feed company, which I think is pretty funny, that a waste management company is now registered as a feed company. And then how do we pre-process that using different techniques that is now certified both nationally and on the EU level. So we maybe have 5 ingredients a week, or we have 50 ingredients, or we have 100 ingredients. They're dependent on the season, they're dependent on many other variables, but that robustness of like not just, okay, let's make a perfect Formula 1 feed, but let's upcycle what is available and then find the right tool for that. We believe that one of them is insects. And again, like, I'm not a fan of silver bullets, so I think insects play a role, and we bet on them because we think they're best. But that doesn't mean that there's a lot of other great solutions that need to be in line with that. So to have a little bit more of focus on this waste stream, we're not allowed to use the word waste, side streams, what has previously been thought about as a waste. Then in our case, it is everything that is within the EU regulations per today, which in principle just means fruits, vegetables, and grains, also dairy products, hydrolyzed fat, some others like fish meal, krill meal, and a few other elements. So in our production today, that is what we use. We get one truck delivered every week, not a full truck, but a truck nonetheless, straight from the waste management company that collects from lots of other producers. And then that's used in our production. It is certified both as food, feed, and fertilizer. And the idea here is just that, like, how do you stabilize it? Because everybody has food waste, and it is in Europe and in Asia and in all other continents, but it is about how do you then take that waste, be able to standardize it, homogenize it, and make it safe each time. And that's also then how do you trace it, how do you log it, who has eaten what, where does what come from. So it's a larger system, and I had a talk just in the lunch about this, that like, oh, we've always been trying to just be good at insects and biology and technology, but if we want to do it circularly, we need to use upcycled waste, which means that you're continuously moving outside your own main focus area, because we will not, in our case, back down on the idea of circularity. Like, many times we're like, well, let's just take a normal feed. But then it kind of defeats the project, like the point of the whole thing we're doing. But it is different working within a linear economy and a circular one, and it requires all stakeholders, and that's why it's very exciting to talk to such a wide variety of people today, in order to go from some laboratory result to a actual commercial one. I think this exact process I think we're the first in that one, where like other people do also use side streams from different production, but having multiple ingredients at multiple vendors at different times, and then having it all certified, that's the first case. I think that's something that I'm super proud that our team has done. And then also showing that, yeah, the end result is of a very high quality. So I think what we often see is that the aquaculture industry or the poultry industry or others, they're like, well, we need exactly these parameters for our feed. There can be no deviance, and it has to be at X tens of thousands of tons. But I also believe that, like, if you're truly talking about a circular economy, then like it is the waste that you have, and sometimes there will be a misproduction at some facility in some production plant, and then you'll have to take use of that. So that is the principles that we're actually talking about, and I think it takes some time for people to get their heads around that. It's more about how do you get the most out of that waste that you have, and there again, insects, at least through our experience and our studies, are functioning very well. We also been working a lot with Nibio, so the project that she took up there, and that's something I'll come to in the end. I wasn't quite sure where to focus today, so I'm going to go through a lot of different things. But it is like, how do you also work with other industries? And like, insects are great, but combining them with biogas, with maybe vertical farming, with microalgae, things that are here already, things that are to come. And at the end of the day, it's the idea of like upcycling as an economic model where even though it sounds a little bit like green and bright and happy-go-lucky, then like it truly is like capitalism on steroids, right? It is the idea that we will not waste anything. Like everything that goes into this production system will be upgraded to a higher quality. And I think that's super exciting. And that's something that's nice to talk about when you talk to bank people and those guys. That, yeah, the circular economy is just an upgraded version of what they already like doing. And it's also great for the planet, which is why I like to work with it. Yeah, so moving ahead, and then I'm just going to go through some other areas of us as a company. But it is getting these production costs down. Like, how do you can sell to food? That's a easier market. It's a higher purchasing power, and then pet food would typically be next, and then a holy grail for Norway with a lot of fish production would be fish, for example. But it is like then looking at the entire value chain. Like, what level of automation are you at? How can you upcycle this waste, reduce your costs? Typically for farmers, 40% of their costs do come from the inputs, whether it's a fertilizer or feed ingredients. If you can get those, at least for today, for free or even be paid for them, with the hope that waste will be looked at as a resource in the future, where there will be an increasing demand for that, and therefore over time there'll be a purchasing power for that resource as well. Then it is trying to allot into the future, 20 years, all waste is a resource, can we still compete? But yeah, technology, automation, the biology, we've got genetics projects going. Over the last 6 months, I think we've managed to develop how to double the amount of kilos per square meter. And I think it's just super fun, because I'm not saying anything bad about anything else, but it is like with pig production, for example. That's great, wonderful. But studies have been done there for hundreds of years. And like what we've pretty much got is a wild animal. We're putting it into an insect production system, and there is an infinite amount of improvements that can be made. So when I'm talking about genetics, I'm talking mostly about breeding now. That's even there, then we see like correlates of up to 40% increases over a 12-month period. I don't know if other industries can look at that. So it's already looking good, and there is so much potential development in the future. And then trying to pick out which spaces can we be good at. How can the Nordics compete? Like has been mentioned before, there are very many large insect companies, and if you try to compete with them on all of their premises when they have a lot more money and a lot more resources, it might not go well. But like, how do the Nordics compete, and which niches can we attack? So that's something that we do, and together with others, including Tubrito, like how through unionship and collaboration, do we find our space? When it comes to the products, then one of the things that is a good indicator, although many others can be used, is that our mortality rate is at 0.001. We put a 1 there because we need a number, but it's often lower. And that's also exciting, right? Like when it comes to animal welfare, then I don't know what the insects are thinking, but that's the mortality rate, so I hope that's a positive indicator, and I'm sure other industries could be quite happy with those numbers, which are often up to 100 times higher. One of the things I want to point out here as well is that is important, that hasn't been taken up today, but is becoming increasingly important for us, is that we are a bioconverter, we are an insect producer, but if you're looking at kilo for kilo, and we're thinking mostly you're drying your product, therefore 70% of an insect is water, then you are predominantly an insect poop producer. So it's very important to look at that side too, like what are you doing with your own side streams, which more and more is looking like a primary product. Like the results we're seeing from the field with the use of frass, both as an already certified, allowed to be certified for the use of organic production, technical thing, it's huge. But that's like one of the reasons why we have chosen, for example, mealworms, because the insect poop is already dry. And drying cost is something that's super important for us. And then we've been talking about substrates the whole day. Like how do you pre-process and post-process your products? In our case, then, like we went against the grain from the start, saying that like mealworms are living in melbiller, mjölbiller. It's supposed to be dry, and that has been pretty much the doctrine throughout all of production. But if you want to get something that's wet and make it dry, you're going to use a lot of kilowatt hours on drying it. So that's one of the main purposes today. We have a ratio of 2 parts of wet for 1 part of dry, and sometimes it's even higher. And that is nice because the larvae also need water. But at the end of the day, like we want to be delivering this as a feed. And if you're using copious amounts of energy to dry out your feed, then suddenly your feed is almost as expensive as your end product. So you really have to try at least to think of it in a total circle. And again, back to the frass, then that's super important too. If you're got wet frass and then you have to use energy there, but you're trying to sell it at 4 or 5 kronor a kilo to the farmer, then you've already spent more money in electricity than you can hope to get back, in the worst case. But maybe I'm rambling now. But I'm just trying to like highlight how we're working and where we're at, and I hope it's still interesting. Yeah, so the products has been very important for us to from the start delivering those and developing those. So since 2017, then we started selling maybe a few tens and then a few hundreds of products, and then getting some larger actors on board. We've had Bakehus in Norway, which is the largest bakery, in 2019, delivering to 40,000 breads. We have many customers here and there. This year, I think we had Europe's largest order of premium frass products. So we had 8 tons and 7,000 products in 60 shops in Norway. It's easy to say like the biggest ever when you're working in a tiny little niche market, but at the end of the day, like it is a difference between thinking that, well, insects are fun, they make sense, they're circular, they're the future, but then also providing evidence that customers are also on that same boat. And in my personal opinion, then unfortunately from the statistics we see, people are not typically very interested in paying more for a sustainable product versus a normal one, at least not as long as they're not sitting around the fine dining table, but in their practical choices. So I think like our advantages will be that you'll see the results through the FRAS. You'll also see how it can be applied as a very neutral ingredient in many food products. And I also think one new thing, which is, that's a personal opinion, but it is that one thing we're seeing is extremely clean. So when you're delivering something to Matessina or others, there isn't yes, no. There is thresholds of like salmonella and all these other things. And when we compare ourselves to many of the other meat alternatives, this is super clean. We're right down there. So that's my own personal prediction, is that that's something that I believe is important for people, that they know that they're eating something that is safe and it's clean, and I think that will maybe be a really good actionable point for people to change their habits, because like, well, at least I know exactly where this comes from. And with insect production you have a total overview from the first day to the last day of production. We've been in on this, so I don't think I need to spend too much more time. I was told I got more time to talk, so then I'm taking my time well.
I will soon rise up.
Okay, good. All right. I only have 2 more slides, but I think in our case at least, then we're not a large company. Like, we've made a lot of headway. We are the first in Norway. We are currently the largest in Norway. And we've been quite aggressive on these values, so that the idea of circular economy doesn't get diminished because of practicalities, that we're able to keep that focus and implement those systems across our own production and together with actors. But it includes all other things as well, like we don't use chemicals, we don't use these things. All these things have been a headache. Every single one of these points is a headache if you want to do it properly, right? Instead of just saying like, well, we've decreased our packaging by 3% of plastic or whatever you want to do. If you want to say, no, actually, we want to do it 100% across the line, it is a headache. But we do see that there's a lot of headway being made, and we do get a lot of support, both from our investors, of course, and collaborators. Oh, wait, I do have a lot of slides left. How many minutes do I have?
You have
2? 1?
2.
2? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, these are nice to look at. We are going to be increasingly needing more proteins. The CIGRs on most of these are going straight up. We need to get the products out, though. Population is rising. Demand both for protein, but I think also just the purchasing power is the difference, where people are changing their diets. In our case, like I mentioned, it's about testing, getting the products out, and iteratively developing that through MVPs and developments of those products. Lastly, it is about research, and I should have spent more time here, but it is about the technology side, it is about the traceability side, it is testing the FRAS, it is testing the mealworms, it is developing software systems that integrate with biology, and in our case, then we work really across the board with many actors, and I feel like we're there now. We can set up our factory, and I'm sure others already have and will now. So moving ahead, then...
You said you had 2 more slides.
I know.
20.
I forgot. So I just leave this here for now, but this is what we've been working on for the last 3 years, which is the idea of industrial symbiosis. And then where we're at now, and then adding on actors a little bit after a little. I got carried away when you said I had a lot of time to use, so then I thought I would spend more. But this is what we're setting up now in Norway as a demonstration, and I believe that like when this is up and running by 4th quarter next year, it'll be a great catalyst for setting up many replicable systems across Europe, especially in the Nordics. So that's me.
That's the 2 slides. A big applause.
Yeah.
We still do have a minute for a question, if any of you have one. Yes. The microphone.
Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. My name is Linn Lichwarna Carlton, and I'm from the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. I was really happy to see that when you presented your team, you also presented your experiences and your expertise, but not least where you have also worked. And in particular, I was interested in yours. I saw that you had also been working in Tanzania. I work mostly in the global south, do research also on insects, especially looking at how traditional ecological knowledge from those environments in the global south, where insects have been a part of the environment, the food culture, but also in terms of other uses. So I'm wondering, as we're having those boxes behind us, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Millennium Development Goals were mainly about we and them, and the Sustainable Development Goals about all of us and this one planet that we are sharing. How are you linking up these amazing opportunities and research and experience that you have with your expertise and experience in Tanzania?
Yeah. In our case, then I started in Tanzania in 2012 and then 13, and then I lived there 14 and 15 and into 16 a bit. And coming back to Norway, then it is that there is a huge amount of resources. Like I know Tanzania, that's a little bit Tanzania, but 3 times the amount of production of fruits and vegetables than is consumed in the country, because it's an exporter of these things. At the same time, you do not have the maybe developed as much freeze drying, hermetisering, a lot of these processes that prolong the shelf life of these products, and it's just hundreds of thousands of tons, millions of tons that are available. So for me personally, like this is an extremely important things. Like what we can do in Norway is very important, of course, but in terms of like scale and significance, then like going to the countries where there is even more resources, of course, where there are resources that are then side streams and not used, is super important. So initially coming back to Norway, the idea was we're going back to Tanzania and we're building this. Of course, there are restraints, there are risk elements and everything. So it was hard. I spent a year doing that. So now maybe there's a bit of a slalom turn where we're like, let's show the technology, let's show all the elements here. Also, my colleague and co-founder Lucas, his wife is from Kenya. They have 2 kids from Kenya. So I wouldn't be surprised within the next few years, once we've proven technology, the capital that has been required for building up these systems is in play, that we would be very happy to go back and collaborate with a lot of the people from Tanzania especially and Kenya that we've already built relationships with. Because then it's like, well, technology is great here in Nordics, but what if we could export some of our knowledge, be given knowledge, exchange knowledge from the global south to the global north, and yeah, like at the end of the day, like we're all on the same planet, right? So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I will give you some honey too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a big applaud.